All right, what's up, YouTube? I am Logan, and back with more Moans Labs. I know that I've been gone off the platform for some time now, and I've just been super busy. But now, as summer's kind of getting closer, we are getting to deal with more of the bikes, and I'm going to show my bikes and the bike reveals, and the whole build process if you guys are into that. So. Luckily, I'm getting a little time now. Unfortunately, I couldn't do a first race video yet because we've actually had our first race. The first race was Winterset on April 15th and 16th of 2022. And yeah, so unfortunately, I took work off for that weekend, and we had a little mishap with the KX250. And I know you guys don't know what the KX250 is yet, but let's just say it's right here. And I want to do the full build on it. Well, not full build on it, but like I want to do the full reveal when it's nice and clean and all fixed again. What ended up happening was something happened with my rear shock, and with the collars on the bottom, something came disconnected. It was actually the dampener piece unthreaded itself, and it was not fixable at the track that day. I couldn't figure it out, so I just loaded the bike and I watched my buddy Jack and my girlfriend Haley came to watch the races. It was a great time. Great event, and I had a lot of fun, and they had like pit bike races. Luckily, we brought the pit bike along so we could do that, and there's some pictures out there. I'm sure I'll put them in this video, but right now I just got finished fixing the KX250 shock. So we are going to set the KX250 up on the lift here, and then we are going to put the shock back in so it at least stands. Maybe take it around the block for a quick ride at night. It's kind of getting late, and it's a weeknight. It's a Wednesday night, and I'm off work tomorrow. So while I'm off work tomorrow, if I can get it to stand tonight, I will look over the bike tonight and go wash it tomorrow, and then you guys will get a full video out of it. So, but for right now, we're going to put this on the lift, knock this out. So now that we got it kind of in there, I am going to look up in the service manual the torque spec for these because, you don't want it, like, obviously, you don't want the shock bolt on the bottom or the top to come loose, so, which I've had happen. We'll talk about that later. But I'm going to look this up quick, and then, then we can hook up the plates and the seat and the subframe and stuff like that. Clean the air filter, just little stuff that's around it to get this thing ready to roll. All right, now a little more about your rear shock if you don't know anything about suspension. And for a lot of you new guys, the young kids, older guys, you should not be afraid of your suspension. Suspension work is really actually pretty straightforward as long as you understand it's a hydraulic system, and hydraulic system shouldn't have air in it. So if it's wherever you put the oil, air should not be. So, and I get a lot of questions about compression, rebound, and like preload, stuff like that. And that's all kind of set to preference, of course, but I'm going to explain a little bit about that. So on a rear shock, you have a spring, right? You have a big rear spring in the back, and the spring is going to be, let's see if I can, it's held down by those collars in there, right there, and or the adjusting nuts, locking nuts, whatever they're called. Anyways, where you put your spring is, if you go to your service manual, which is usually online, I like to use manuallibs.com, super easy, and most bikes are all pretty the same. I mean, there's usually two to three types of suspension. KYB, Showa, and WP are the three big ones that I know of that I usually work on. And these shocks here, so this is my 2000 KX250 Ripper bike, love it. And where you put your shock, how far you can press it down, on mine is 115 millimeters, and I just converted that to inches because I live in the States, and US standard, aha. All right, and I just had a spare tape measure lying around, and you can convert that. Mine was like 4.53 inches. And where you measure that from is you should have the tip down to where your lock nut is, those little brass things on top of your shock. And then the center mounting hole, let's see if I can get it. So there's this little shock up here. This is your center mounting hole. So from about the tip there to the center mounting hole, I should have about 4.53, which mine might be a little more, a little less. I mean, if you're within like, you know, a quarter to half inch, you're probably just fine, you know what I mean? And you can tighten it down all you want. I mean, there gets to be a point where you can't tighten it down with your hand anymore. You just gotta spin the shock, spin the shock, spin the shock. I've been doing this long enough to where I kind of know where mine's supposed to be, so it's all preference. But here for the next part, I'm gonna cut to this and do it forwards. All right, so for this next part, I'm gonna talk about compression and rebound. And compression and rebound are two parts that allow you to adapt to what you're riding. And on this one, the Showa, you have your compression. I almost call it compound compression. And basically you have two adjustments here on this one. It's about 2000 KX250, like I said. And I have two adjustments. This is it's basically like a valve. And you have air here, you have an air bleeder here, and then you have oil in the shock, right? So your shock has oil, and there's a certain amount of oil in there, and then you pump this up to a certain PSI. Mine was like 16 PSI. It's supposed to be filled with nitrogen, but you know, there's a nitrogen in the air. It's 79% made up of nitrogen, so I just put air in it. It'll be fine. It's never hurt me. Then you have, so more about this compression. So this is the big valve. So imagine this blue part. This is like a big screw. And so they talk about in the service manual counterclockwise or clockwise clicks. And these have a certain amount of clicks. So the big one will only turn in maybe 2-3 times all the way in. And that is your big adjustment. So how do I explain this? They have oil in the shock and air. And as you compress the suspension, it's not just your spring doing the work. It's okay, so the oil pumps up through the big part of the shock, through the valve, so this is a valve, and into this air. And there's an air pocket right here, the bladder. And it squeezes the air down, and then when you're done compressing the suspension, the air pushes it back into the shock. And basically, if you want it to restrict the amount of oil in here, which makes it harder, you turn it in. You turn the screw in, and it closes the door a little bit to let the oil pass fluidly through and through. So a lot of like enduro guys or the extreme enduro guys run this really, really soft. So turn it all the way out to keep it really soft. They want a lot of suspension fluid movement. And a lot of like, you know, desert racers, hair scrambles, some moto guys really like this tight. So motocross, I would say you keep it kind of right in the middle, depending on the track you're riding, if it's soft or not. I like sand, I like to run it a little softer, get a little more traction at the back. And for harder tracks, steep faces, you turn it up a little bit, and you can really adjust that to all you want. So I like to tell kids don't mess with the little one too much, because that's fine tuning. If you want to really see a difference, do the big blue one. And that's just a 17 millimeter for me. It's pretty standard size. It could be a 22 on yours, an 18, 15, 14. It's all types of stuff, but that's mainly what your compression valve is. All right, so more about your compression valve. So like I said, I'd like to tell a lot of kids don't mess with this little flathead screw piece, because you want to mess with the big part first. You kind of get comfortable. That's going to show you a lot of comfortability in your shock, as you'll turn it out and be like, oh, that's too soft. Okay, and then you'll turn it in and be like, oh, that's a little harder than I like. And then that plays into your rebound also, but we're going to talk about that third. So I like to keep mine, I think mine's all the way out right now, but I like to keep mine about a turn and I think it's 5/6 or 2/3 in, so 4/6 turn in. And I like that because I'm kind of a lighter guy. I'm about 140 pounds, and this is a lot of bike for me. So I like to keep it kind of stiff, and then you know, really gets it feeling like there's an actual like basically there's a rock under me, so I can know what's going on. And then from there, depending on, basically the little one is for the track you're riding. If you want it to be a little bit slower but don't want to go back a whole click, you turn this out. And this should have, I think it's like, so mine's 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks per turn, full turn. And this is, I think I remember mine being either it's 16, 18, sometimes I know the top ones sometimes have a lot too. That can be like 30 clicks, but a lot of these are just like minimal stuff if you want it just a little quicker. But you shouldn't really be adjusting the big blue one on race day. You should be kind of have that dialed in after your practice. If you're a moto guy, adjust that after your first or second practice. And then from there, you can adjust it based on how the track is, because I know a lot of guys, they ride their first moto and it could be muddy in the morning, it can be soft, it can be slick. So I like to kind of keep that a little bit softer for more traction. But at the end of the day, the track gets really hard, dry, run out and bumpy and rough, you know, so you can kind of tighten that back up, kind of get it to feel more like it's on a sidewalk, and then kind of a harder feel to that. So that's important. Don't mess with the blue one too much on race day after practice, and then you can mess with this between motos, the little one. The third is your rebound. So the third adjustment is the rebound, and what rebound is so if you compress a bike suspension, so if say you land on a jump, if you land flat, if you land on bumps or braking bumps or jump landing, stuff like that. So obviously we talked about your compression. That's how far your bike wants to sink. That's basically how so like that's how far it hits down. So if you're bottoming out on your bike a lot, you want to turn your blue valve either in, or like if it's not a whole lot, if you're just barely skipping it, you can get away with the little knob. Turn that in a little bit. It's basically just tighten it just a hair. And basically that's all you need to do. But for rebound is how fast or slow it returns to normal bike height. So that would be like if it hits down, you want it to slap up right away. Instance for this, I said enduro guys might want it either super slow, they want it to return, or actually no, not enduro guys. Let's say you're running like an 80-mile hare and hound thing through the desert. If you're doing 70 miles an hour through the desert, you hit a bump, you want that to be nice and loamy, and really like you don't want it to slingshot you back, and when you hit a deep hole or you hit a pothole or a ridge or a rut or something. So usually keep that pretty soft down there, and it doesn't snap you back. It rides more like a Harley than it does a dirt bike, and if that makes sense. But the way that works is there is a so there's a nut here attached to your swing arm linkage, and I want to say right here. So that is how you tighten it, and tighten it being all the way out, so all the way counterclockwise will be the slowest rebound. So if I push down on this all the way out, it's just going to sink and maybe come up maybe a half inch or so, maybe inch and a half. But if I tighten it all the way back up, push it down, it's going to snap back a lot quicker. It's going to come all the way back up. And that's basically how it is. Now I will say one thing about a rear shock is if you have an older bike, like if you get a farm bike, or if it's a bike that you've never had suspension or the fork seals or the head seal in the back of the rear shock fixed, oil is huge. So if you don't have any oil in your shock, you'll have what we call the farm bike bounce, which is like if you take this off and you bounce your seat, it bounces like a basketball, really fast, really quick, really fast. That means you have no oil in your shock. Now, if you put oil in your shock, none of these settings are going to matter to you, because it's all based off the hydraulic system of the oil and the fluid. So having oil in your shock is important. Yes, you can ride without the oil in the shock. It's not necessarily good for it, but it can be done. But if you're serious about getting into racing, this will help you a lot, is learning about your compression, your rebound, and then your preload and your ring. Basically, like preload is how stiff your not how stiff your spring is. That matters too. You can get stiffer springs or you don't have to. I like to run, that's just a stock spring in there. And you can check on Race Tech for your weight. They have a nice calculator there for certain spring rate is what they call it. So how stiff a spring is. And so mine's so if I'm 140 pounds, I think mine is 4.97 and they go up by 0.02. So It's really adapted to your weight. And like say a 200-pound guy is going to need a little stiffer spring, obviously, to be completely comfortable and aware of all of this. You can kind of get away with it sometimes with this, but not always. So that's kind of important. So hopefully that helps. We're going to move on. All right, so I'm editing the video, and I wanted to say in that last clip that it's not as important to change your rear spring if you're not into competitive riding. Most rear shocks are set up for a 160-pound rider. And I think that's just the spring rate. So like if you're around 160, give or take 10, 15 pounds both ways, you're probably fine. If you're a lighter guy like me, I'm about 140, or if you're like my brother who's like 180, look into Racetech's website and check out, plug in your weight and what you ride and your riding kind of skill level, and it should give you an idea of how different your stock spring is to your to a different spring that might better suit you. So that's all I meant by that. But it's way more important to have etiquette oil and to understand what the shock is doing. And yeah, play around with your adjustments. Don't be afraid of your suspension. Your suspension is your friend, and the more comfortable you get with it, the better you will be a rider on all surfaces. Like I was saying with the moto guys, first practice, muddy, cold, slick, and the afternoon, dry, hard pack, rough, and that's two different tracks. For the competitive guys, it's two different tracks, and that can make all the difference in your day. So yeah, I encourage you to play with your suspension, and if you like the video, drop a subscribe and follow Moans Labs on Instagram. I will be doing a gold valve set for the more advanced section of this, on this build especially, and 2 more builds after this. So that's kind of the difference between the stock suspension and the Racetech gold valve or the factory connection stuff. If you're into that, I will be doing that myself, and you can see the process, and I will explain the difference between the, like the ports and the gold valve and your stock and your gold valve. So if you're interested in that, drop a subscribe. I want to make more videos, so keep watching the videos. I'm here to teach you and educate, because that's what I love to do. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe.